Now we're going to talk about non-deliverable forwards and why this market is so specific. The determination of forward exchange rates is based on the theory that the bank replaces the customer in the hedging transactions which are executed to construct a forward price. But these transactions, on which the calculation of forward prices is based, can be replicated by the end customer. The end customer can execute both the spot transaction and the transactions of lending and borrowing the two currencies. This ability to replicate the forward transaction ensures exactly the uniqueness of the forward price. And as usual, calculation of the forward price is based on the efficient market hypothesis. This is where there's the assumption that it's a perfect market and there's no opportunity for arbitrage. So we know the execution prices of our transactions. So there's only one possible solution for our forward price. And if the price for the forward differed from the calculated price found from these transactions, well then that gives us a possible arbitrage. For example, if the calculated forward price was 124.50, and if this was cheaper than the price offered on the market at 125, well then you could arbitrage by selling the forward currency in the market, buying spot, and doing two lending-borrowing transactions, borrowing dollars and lending euros. But this assumption is no longer valid when the currencies in question aren't convertible, as most frequently traded major currencies are convertible. So if the currency being traded is a non-convertible currency, then the borrowing and lending operations on these currencies may be prohibited or just highly taxed, so you can't construct the forward rate as you can with the major currencies, which remember are convertible. There are a number of currencies that can't be loaned or borrowed. So for these currencies, the forward exchange market doesn't exist as such. So to overcome this shortcoming, the banks created the NDF, or non-deliverable forward, which allows the end user, an importer or exporter, to have a hedge that's settled by cash and not a physical settlement. So even if the terms for an NDF can differ completely from a normal forward trade that has a physical settlement, that is the actual exchange of currencies, on convertible currencies, we can still end up with a product which is comparable. So what currencies use NDFs? Well, many currencies in Asia, China, India, Korea, Philippines, and most Latin American currencies, Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, among others. The forward price of these currencies doesn't just depend on a well-established arithmetical mechanism between the spot price and both interest rates, but it also depends on some market data, which is a parameter measuring the offer-demand equilibrium of the forward currency. NDFs allow investors and borrowers to take positions in currencies which are subject to official controls. The volume of NDF contracts has been steadily increasing in recent years, with non-residents using them to hedge not only importing and exporting flows, but also increasing investments in non-convertible bonds. Let's take the example of Brazil. How can an importer of Brazilian products hedge their currency risk, since Brazil deals with its exports mainly in its local currency? Our importer can't buy the currency for cash, since it's forbidden to hold the Brazilian real offshore. And moreover, it's impossible to lend it as the cash market is regulated. The market has managed to circumvent the problem of hedging in a straightforward manner by creating an offshore market. This offshore market allows you to take a position on the Brazilian currency without ever possessing it, so it makes it possible to hedge the risk of price moves in the Brazilian real. This instrument, an NDF, is calculated using the methodology of a FRA, a forward rate agreement, which makes it possible to hedge a borrowing or lending position in the money market without ever taking out a term loan. There's no transaction on the amount to be hedged, but only a final payment of the difference between the price originally agreed upon to cover and the spot price on the final date. A nominal amount is agreed, and this corresponds exactly to the need for the hedge to protect against currency price moves. The final payment is in a deliverable currency, which is usually dollars, but sometimes euros. Let's work through a numerical example of an NDF. We'll take an American importer of Brazilian products, and they have to pay 10 million Brazilian reals of products in 1 year, so our American importer has a 10 million Brazilian real transaction to hedge. The NDF market quotes for the US dollar Brazilian real in 1 year the price of 4, so that's 4 Brazilian reals for 1 US dollar in 1 year. The number of contracts is 2.5 million, that's 10 million divided by 4. So the importer will agree then on an NDF contract for $2.5 million at a price of 4. Their position is therefore seller of NDF since he wants to buy reals, the Brazilian currency, forward. So 12 months later, there are 2 possible scenarios. Either the US dollar has appreciated against the Brazilian real, for example to 4.25, or it's depreciated to 3.75. Let's go back to the scenario if the US dollar has appreciated to 4.25. Our importer will lose and has to pay 2.5 million multiplied by 4.25 minus 4 equals Brazilian real of 625,000. But this amount has to be paid in dollars. So with the spot price of 4.25, the dollar settlement will be 625,000 divided by 4.25 equals 147,059 US dollars. And it's negative, so our importer has to pay. We have our equivalent in convertible currency of minus 147,059 US dollars. The importer must now do their spot transaction, which is to buy 10 million reals at the current price at a cost of 4.25. So that's $2,352,941. The total cost to the importer of the spot price plus the NDF is therefore the sum of the two, giving us 2.5 million US dollars. Let's go back to our 2 possible scenarios, and this time we'll look at where the US dollar Brazilian real has fallen to 3.75. If the US dollar has fallen, the importer is a winner on the NDF, so its hedge has been useful, but they end up paying higher for the Brazilian real on the spot market. So the results are, on the NDF, 2.5 million multiplied by 0.25 equals 625,000 Brazilian reals. But this amount has to be paid in dollars. So with the spot price of 3.75, the dollar settlement will be $166,667. We have our equivalent in convertible currency of $166,667, and the spot costs him 10 million divided by 3.75 equals 2,666,667 US dollars. The sum of the two still makes a neat $2.5 million. And this 2.5 million corresponds to the conversion of the 10 million reals at the rate defined by the NDF, which was 1 US dollar equaling 4 Brazilian reals. So regardless of the price of the Brazilian real at the end of the period, the importer has actually fixed his buying rate at the price agreed by the NDF without any FX loss or gain. Unlike with forward exchange trades, the banker intervenes only in the settlement of the price difference in a totally deliverable currency, and this is for the nominal amount agreed. But the main thing for the importer is obviously that they can fix their future price in advance, and they can know with certainty the price of their imported goods.